But yeah, what's happening in Ohio is actually really, really interesting. Ohio's holding their primary today, but the entire thing is going to be basically mail-in ballots. And what's interesting about Ohio is that this is a test case for perhaps future elections during the time of the coronavirus, maybe even an election in November. So we're going to bring in Jeremy Pelzer. He's joining us now. Jeremy, you are a reporter for Cleveland.com's Capital Letter. So talk to me about how it's working in Ohio. How are they doing mail-in ballots, and how are they able to pivot so quickly to mail-in?
Well, Ohio's primary was initially March 17th, but because of course, the coronavirus, they moved it back to today. Initially, the Secretary of State here, Frank LaRose, wanted to make it June 2nd, but state lawmakers thought otherwise. And it's, as you said, an all-mail ballot election, and there's been some issues, especially with the Postal Service. In the Toledo area, for instance, a lot of people aren't getting their ballots on time, or even their ballot applications. So overall, things seem to be going as planned, but there's a number of issues that people have had to work through. And we'll see by tonight how many of them are big problems and how many of them have been resolved.
So Ohio's Secretary of State said delays in mail deliveries have caused some Ohio voters to not receive their ballots, even though, this is important, they requested them on time. Is there any chance that the ballots won't be counted?
There's a chance that the ballots won't be counted. Like first-class mail, which takes about normally 1 to 3 days, is taking sometimes a week or more and voter ballot applications were due here on Saturday, and ballots have to be postmarked by yesterday and to arrive and count. So as ballots come in, we're going to see how many arrive on time and how many arrive late. It's already a low turnout election. It's the lowest, I believe, in Ohio since 2012. And it's a pretty subdued election, especially with Bernie Sanders dropping out. So we'll see how many voters are actually participating in this election here.
Yeah, it's so difficult to predict in this time just how things are going to turn out, but we sort of live based on polls and predictions. I mean, that's the way the system works. So I want to talk to you about what happened in 2016 and 2018 in Ohio. In 2016, in the general election, it went red. In the gubernatorial election in 2018, it went red. What are Democrats doing to win back this state?
Well, this year, there's no gubernatorial race on the ballot. It's really only the presidential race and congressional races. And with congressional races looking to be locked up for either party, it's the presidential race is really the biggest game in town here in Ohio. And recent polls show that Joe Biden is either ahead by a little bit or he's neck and neck with President Trump. And so it's unlikely that Democrats will pick up a whole lot of congressional or legislative seats, but they are hoping at least to make Ohio the swing state that it's traditionally been this year.
So there's a recent poll out that finds that when it comes to favorability in Ohio, Republican Governor Mike DeWine is well ahead of President Trump. It also shows the president is slightly ahead of Joe Biden. Has President Trump's coronavirus response impacted his chances with Ohio voters?
Well, that remains to be seen, especially with the economic fallout yet to be seen in both Ohio and around the country. That poll you referenced shows that about 50% approve of how the president has handled coronavirus. But here, Governor Mike DeWine is getting 85% approve of the job he's done. So as you said, he's running well ahead. That poll you referenced is one of many to show both the president and Joe Biden neck and neck, essentially. And we'll have to see how many people, what people do in the coming weeks and the coming months, and also what happens in the November election. There's enough problems here during the primary. We're not sure what November is going to look like. Officials say it's too soon to tell what November will look like, but that, of course, will make a big difference as well.
You know, in a way, those poll numbers don't surprise me that much because the president has really been sort of throwing a lot into the laps of the state. And so if the constituents feel like the state is doing a good job or their lives are not as bad as it could be in the midst of this coronavirus pandemic, then they're going to give credit to their state leader as opposed to the president. He's been kind of going back and forth, and I'm sure part of what he wants to do is also take credit for the economy. So let me ask you about the economy in Ohio. The unemployment rate jumped 5.5% in March amid this crisis. How does the economy rank in terms of issues for Ohio voters in November?
Well, of course, the economy was the #1 issue in Ohio even before the coronavirus. But now I believe it's going to be an issue that's just going to sweep just about every other issue out of the water in Ohio and probably a lot of other states as well. We'll have to see what the fallout is. How many people will get their jobs back? Will people continue to approve or disapprove of how the president's doing with his coronavirus response? The coming months, a lot can happen. Nothing's decided yet. But the economy is going to be #1 on people's minds.
#1 indeed, probably not just in Ohio, but across the country. Jeremy, thank you so much.
Thank you.